If you're here and present, I think you can win. So make sure you pick up one of those tickets. You might be saying public forum. What's the rationale? Of course, the topic is school calendar. The latitude that we've been given in the state of Arkansas gives us the latitude to do a traditional calendar, a year-round calendar, a 4-day calendar week. And so we spent some time working with our employees discussing the pros and cons of different types of calendars. And so following this forum this evening, we'll be sending out a survey to all the parents within the district and giving everyone the latitude to look at some different types of calendar options, really just allowing for parents to weigh in. It'll give the school district, the Board of Education, a better understanding as to if everybody is very satisfied with the current structure of the calendar or if the community at large would like to embrace a calendar change. It'll just give us some additional guidance as to the direction that we might want to go moving forward. So that's kind of the rationale behind this evening. A couple of things that I would share that if you've been watching some of our board meetings, our Board of Education is very committed to the academic learning of really a 178-day school year. And so the options that you'll be viewing here this evening all hold a 178-day school year. They're not a reduced school year in any context. And the law does allow for us to provide an option of up to 7, I believe, continuous weeks off in the summertime in a year-round approach. The design models that we're kind of looking at have a shortened summer, and they may be too much of a dramatic change for our parents in our community right now, but they have really just only a 4-week summer time frame until school is extended back in. And we wanted to kind of show you some of those examples here this evening and then try to address any questions with you. And I'm going to let Mr. Campbell, he's kind of been working with me on this process. We'll try to show you a couple of these different types of calendars, and if you want to kind of take it away, I'll step over here at the other side where I can see.
Okay. Good evening. Thank you for coming. We start out our look at calendars with what a traditional calendar would look like next year. And so each one of these calendars that you're going to see are set up with 178 days. And so in green, you have 178 student days on each one of these calendars. Normally, you know, on our calendar, there are lots of different colored days. We have the teacher work days, and we have the first day of school, last day of school. But on these calendars, we've just highlighted student days.
Right.
And then out to the side under the events, we've given you the breaks as far as where each quarter would end. And with the law as it stands right now, in a traditional calendar, you cannot start school until 2 weeks before Labor Day. So in next year's calendar, that would require us to start school on August 21st of August 23. So the earliest we could start school next year would be August 21st on a traditional calendar. Now, what that does to us to get the semesters close to equal in length, the first semester would have to end on January 19th. So we would have Christmas break, come back, and the students in middle school and high school would have their semester test after Christmas break. We added a week in there. We could have ended on January 12th, and it would have been a little closer, but we tried to have a little more time back in school before we ended the semester. So that's what we have on that calendar, and that is pretty much what a traditional calendar would look like next year for the students, unless the legislature in their meeting in January changes the law in some way, which they did in the last legislative session. They repealed this rule for 1 year only, which is why we were able to start a week earlier this year. But right now, where the law stands, That's the earliest that school could start on a traditional calendar. Good on that? On that particular calendar, we would continue our early dismissals on Wednesday. So it would look very much like this year and all the past years. That's what the traditional calendar would look like. Dr. Murphy mentioned that there are several options in the law. There is an option, and we're not offering this option. There is an option where you count the instructional minutes in the year, and just as long as you have enough minutes in the year, you can just meet that number of days.
Correct.
So if you were to take what we have right now, we could do school in about 140 days. Just the way our bell schedule works right now, because we begin our instructional day at 7:30 and we end our instructional day at 3:15, 3:20. So our minutes would add up in such a way that we could actually just go to school 140 days. But we're not looking at that because, as Dr. Murphy said, the board's not interested. We're really not interested in decreasing the number of student contact days. Cutter Morning Star, Bismarck, Caddo Hills, Poen are all on a 4-day week. And their 4 days, each of those days count for a day and a quarter. So that in a week, in 4 days, they're in school basically the same amount of time that they would be in 5 days. They go longer each day and then don't go on the 4th day. And so they're meeting about 143 days is what their calendar amounts to. And we're not offering an option like that and to be considered. We're looking at only 178 days. But with that being said, we offer a year-round model. This year-round model has Mondays off all along, with the exception of 3 weeks where students would come to school on Mondays. And so these would still be the same length of day that we have now, actually a little shorter.
Right.
And the students would come the last day of each semester, the last Monday of each semester, and the Monday of Easter week to get in our 178 days. So that's one example. That would give us a 3-day weekend literally every week of the year, and then about a 4-week vacation in the summer. Everybody understand that one? Okay. That one does not have early dismissal on Wednesdays. To get our minutes in, we would have to be here all day on those 4 days. Mm-hmm. And then we have a third option that we're asking you to look at and consider, and this is year-round 5-day weeks. And now, in this particular calendar, it has basically 4.5 weeks of summer vacation, but it's a little deceiving, and I'll explain that in a minute. And then it has, in this model, it has basically a week off every month. You have the last week of August, you have the first week of October, you have Thanksgiving week, you have 3 weeks at Christmas, you have 2 weekends and 2 Mondays and 4 more days off in January. You have spring break, you have a week off in April, you have a week off in May, you come back 2 weeks in June, and then you have 2 weeks off in June, and then you would be rolling over into July of 24. So the deceiving part on that is you can't lump those 2 weeks in with those 2.5 weeks up there. What this would actually look like for us if we were to adopt a calendar like this is we would not begin this calendar until July 1st. So right now, school ends Memorial Day week. We have all of June off this coming year. Then you would have 2.5 weeks in July, school would start, you'd have all that time off, and then the most we could have off would be 7 weeks in June of 24 and July of 24 would be the longest break we could take at that point in time if we were to adopt a year-round calendar. On this calendar, we would have early dismissal Wednesdays. Everybody clear on that one? So those are basically the 3 calendar models that we are offering. Now, the green days on any of these are not set absolutely in stone. We couldn't start any earlier than August 21st on the traditional calendar. These days could be arranged however we choose to arrange them.
As far as the sequence of breaks.
As far as the sequence of breaks. This was the calendar that we presented to the staff just as a model, and some of the feedback we received from them was that they would prefer, rather than a break a month, to save the weeks and basically have 2 weeks off at the end of each quarter, rather than break it up on a monthly basis. So that was some of the input. So that is the model we're looking at. So at this point, I have the survey set. It'll go out on all of our platforms, everybody who gets notifications, and it'll be on our Facebook, it'll be on our website. The link to the survey will go out at 7:15 tonight. Mm-hmm. So that's when the survey will be going out. It is limited to 1 response per email address, and we are collecting email addresses on it so that we know that who we have participating. I don't know that there's anything else on the survey. We'll share those survey results at the board meeting next Monday night. So we're asking that the survey be completed by 8 a.m. next Monday morning, and then the board meets next Monday night.
I would just kind of echo at this point in time, we're just very much curating information. We're not at a point of making a final decision. We're just trying to start a dialogue within the community. Our board has asked for us to move this forward to a community level. We work through the teaching staff, and so we're really looking for, out of this survey, would there be a trend or a tendency? We'll look for comments as well, but is there a preference towards a stronger look to a 4-day work week approach? Quite frankly, when you look at this, as we've kind of alluded to, it's 178 days of instruction. You can kind of try to move those days however you want to move them, but it's 178 days of instruction. And so without reducing the overall number of days of instruction, it's not going to look like a calendar that Cutter is presenting currently, because the calendar that they have currently is a much shortened school year at 143 days. So we just would want you to understand that, as parents select one of these 3, it's just because we make a choice here initially, that this doesn't mean that this is the finalization. We're just still at this point collecting information. And really, if we have what I would tell you when I look at surveys, if we really have a strong sense where we're seeing that staff and community is weighing in on a certain calendar, that would give us momentum to move that forward. Most communities in this type of a topic, because it's such a significant change, there will be a certain degree of division if you were to try to move that forward in that 50-50 type ratio. And so we really don't want to move something forward that we don't think would truly benefit our students.
And the law allows us to examine these options and select from these options. And because there are other schools who have done this, we've been questioned.
Right.
Why are we looking at a 4-day week? As soon as Cutter made their decision, we began to get that question. So we just want to look at it. We believe there are some benefits to year-round school. 25% of our students receive mental health care services. And when we take 10 or 11 weeks off, it's questionable as to whether or not they receive those services. A large number of our students eat breakfast and lunch at school and are guaranteed breakfast and lunch every day. And then for 10 or 11 weeks, they aren't guaranteed breakfast or lunch every day. We send home bags of food every Friday to a significant number of students. And then 10 or 11 weeks, they don't get those bags on Friday, so we don't know what they eat on the weekends. So there are some concerns on just the services side of things as to whether or not when we take our long break, it's a real benefit to some of our students. You know, academically, we are concerned that we can't get a significant number of students to come to summer school. Mm-hmm. And we feel like they need to come to summer school. And so if we had a year-round option, then summer school wouldn't be quite the issue. If we had a couple of week breaks at the end of every quarter, we could run 2 or 3 days of summer school one of the first week and immediately address the needs that have been identified in that quarter. Right then. So we see that as a positive for our kids. We all have habits, and it takes about 10 days to break a habit. If your habit is not to get up and get to school, then, and you have 11 weeks when you don't have to do that, then that's a habit we have to reestablish. So that would be a thing that we feel like would be a positive. You know, I can tell you that research says everybody catches up, whether you're year-round school or whether you're a traditional calendar. By December, everybody's in about the same place, regardless of how much you had to make up with kids if you took the full summer off. But we know that our kids need the routines, our kids need the services. So that's part of why we're looking at this. And the other part is that it's legal to look at it. The law establishes these calendars as options. And so I think we owe it to our community to consider the options that are legally in front of us. So, but we need your input. We need everyone's input. We need to know where you fall out on this. We surveyed the staff. Staff preferred this calendar. This was their number one option. Number two was traditional. Mm-hmm. You'll have the option of picking your first choice, your second choice, and your third choice. And we'll look at all of those numbers as we analyze the input from the survey. And we'll read every comment and take those comments into consideration as well. Yeah, Ms. Tillery.
When you surveyed your staff, was it consistent in the high school as?
We didn't collect emails.
So the question was, when we surveyed the staff, was it consistent between building to building in terms of their perception? And so to ensure that our staff could anonymously select those surveys, we didn't ask for them to submit emails or anything. So we weren't able to see whether the high school trended one direction based on extracurriculars versus the elementary school with kindergarten and first grade. Good question.
Mm-hmm. And we know there are different considerations across the board.
Correct, based on the age level of the children.
Yeah.
I was a minute or two late, sorry. Is there a way that we can look at these calendars online?
Yeah, once,
yes.
Whenever he opens up the survey, you'll be able to click on the link and be able to look at the entire calendar, each one of them in depth, and then make your choices accordingly. So yeah, you'll be able to get a good look at them.
Yeah.
Other questions for the group? I know, yes, sir.
So basically, I want to make sure I understand, the first and second options by the staff were not the issue on the 4-day week. It had the extended school year. My question is, if the consensus of the community is over 50 to 60%, is that something the school board would roll with? Or, I mean, I guess I'm asking, if there is a majority consensus in this survey, is this enough to motivate the school board?
Well, you know, in the role that I'm in,
Well, and let me clarify, what our 4-day option is still 178 days. Okay.
Goes to the services that you talked about.
Right.
right.
I want everyone to have. And that's probably why they don't like that, because it limits a very short window in the summer. But I just want to make sure that I'm hearing you right, that if there's a consensus from the community, I have no idea what it is, but
Right. Would the board be willing to embrace it?
is it a legitimate option? Because I realize it's the school board.
Ultimately, they would have to vote it through. We did spend quite a bit of time at a governance structure level, bringing forth calendars that we feel as though would benefit and we could support. So there is an interest to pursue this type of a calendar. That's why it's available for the community to take a look at. The last thing we'd want to do is put an option forward before a community and then the board just have a complete level of reservation. We wouldn't have moved to this level had there not been that degree of interest.
Is there any research out of the other two, the non-traditional, that one can look at to see the difference? Because I think you said the primary motivation less is retention. You did say it's all even come December, but what kind of data, what kind of research are you looking at on the other two options to get away from the traditional?
Really, it's looking at services. When you look at the research associated with the year-round school, it's our students and creating consistent routines for our students. It's currently where we're at with the degree of instability. When I say that, I don't mean that in a negative manner, but I think routine is critical. We have found during and throughout this pandemic, as we've tried to figure out what school looks like moving forward, when I hear educators today, you know, the consistency and what we're having to do to get back into routines is much more challenging than what it has ever been before. And so it's not so much a research-based approach as it is a common sense approach that if we limit the amount of time that we're away from the structure, we feel like we're going to create a stronger structure moving forward. And really the intentionality, I would tell you, would be specifically looking at a pre-K through 8 learning environment.
And as I mentioned, the data comes out as a wash by
Right.
December. There's not, I couldn't find anything that said that year-round school was the best thing since sliced bread.
Is there a lot of data on the 4-day?
No, no,
That we're kind of
yeah,
going into a new area on that.
yeah.
That will kind of be determined in the future. I mean, so there's more than a couple districts, as you mentioned.
Sure. Well, there's
Right.
data nationally on a 4-day with a shortened week. There's been strategies based on reduction in revenue on a national basis where schools have taken the measure of reducing from 180 days of instruction to 135 days of instruction to reduce transportation costs, try to increase attendance rates, take a different approach to school in that regard. It really boils out at a community level. A community that embraces the concept, you know, will our children attend more regularly, number one. That's going to create a better learning environment for all. And so whatever we choose to do in the structure of the school setting, at the conclusion of that, if we consistently have children in school on a daily basis, they're more equipped to learn. And so that's, you know, there's a lot of conversations around how people want, what people want school to look like. And the legislature has put forth, basically in the last 2 years, a menu of options that puts school districts at large across the state at least in a position to discuss it. Years ago, it was never a discussion because it was never an option.
How many schools right now across the state are doing this new year-round?
Mm-hmm.
Do we have any, or are we gonna be leading the flag and marching, or?
Marion is doing what's called a hybrid currently. There's roughly, I saw 10 or 12 on the website that are attempting to do some form of a hybrid or a year-round type approach in the current year. There's over 52 districts?
Yeah, or 35.
235, okay. So that's the overall number of districts. So, would we be going first? No. Would we be in the first 15? Yes.
They started this year, or this their first semester?
Some of them are in their second year. Keep in mind, they've only been able to do this for the past couple of years. A couple of them did it the very first year. Some are doing it in the current year in which we're in, being their first year. So some of them are into their second year.
Right. Unless you were, East Elm over in Little Rock is a charter school. It's a public charter school, and that was part of what they wrote into their charter was an extended school year. So their kids come early August.
Was there any that initially went?
5.
Go ahead.
East M's a 5-day.
Were there any that initially did that, the conversion to a different school calendar that have now reverted back to traditional? Or are they still going strong with their current model?
There was someone, and I can't remember, was it Marvel?
That
That
tried it the first year
Tried it
and then
first
went
year
back.
and went back. Yeah, they were year round, and I don't know why. Yes,
When-
ma'am.
So is that an option then, if you decide to select a different calendar and it does not work as well as, you know, or it just work there traditionally, is that an option to go back to that at some point if you see
Yes, ma'am. You would declare, I think it's in the May cycle that when we report information to the state, we file cycle reports. And I believe it's in the May cycle report that you declare what your calendar will be for the coming year.
Here's the caution, and I'm not opposed to making modifications to the calendar. It's kind of like our discussion right now. There's a lot of people that are already made and have made tentative plans for next summer. And so a lot of people plan what they're doing with their children throughout the year, throughout the summer. And so we would want to make and have the intentionality to make an informed decision early enough that it wouldn't negatively impact the majority of our community. So I think the time frame of the decision is very important. But we do have the latitude if we felt as though it just was not working, yeah, you can make a change.
Terry.
So you have a lot of organizations on campus that have events all summer long.
Mm-hmm.
Conventions and programs, so if those happen to fall during when you want them to be in school, are y'all gonna say, we can't let you miss the whole week of school, that's not?
So kind of rephrase that. I mean,
Yeah,
when we think
well,
about our activities that we have going on, we have
So, for example, Dr. Beta Club,
Beta Club,
Junior
going-
Beta Club, and Elementary Beta Club, and they have 3 separate national conferences spread out over 3 weeks
Mm-hmm.
in the summer. They have I think elementary goes first, and then high school, and then middle school, and they all meet in the same place, but they meet 3 different weeks. And so Beta Club just basically moves in somewhere, and so they have their national conferences, and in my mind, it would be very similar to FFA's national conference, which is in October of every year, and we load up a bunch of kids and we take them to Indianapolis every year. School business absence. The state fair takes place every year during the school year, and we send a bunch of kids to. Yeah. We,
Take off school to do this? Because, there's like weeks of basketball camps.
right. So basketball camp, and we don't have all the answers.
Right.
But I can tell you that, we've talked about 7-on-7 football. Okay, 7-on-7 football takes place during the day on a weekday. So do they figure out a place to play 7-on-7 football in the evening rather than during the day? Our basketball camps, until we conditioned the gym, took place in the evening. And go to other camps. I know. I get it. And 2 of the weeks that are blocked out in the summer are the dead weeks. So they can't do them during those weeks. So then there are the other 2 weeks, and then they would have to figure out if that's going to work for them.
Correct.
That's part of why the 4-week-long break is a little rough because of the camps. And we know that. But this is not set in stone. 7 is the max. We know that. So could they get it all in 7 weeks with 2 of them being dead weeks? I don't know the answer to that. Could they rearrange what they do and play in the evenings after school for those camps? Rethink what they do for camps. And I don't know the answer, but
We do know at the
we do know it's a question.
yeah, and at the secondary level, we do know that there's a wide array of interest and a wide array of activities with commitment levels. And so we know full well that, if we did not have the dead weeks, we would have some kids that would never take a break based on the structure of the activities. And so, we do know that at the secondary level and kind of with our kids are here pretty much. The kids that are really involved, they're here all year when you really get to looking at where the kids are at. That doesn't mean that the structure of the educational setting is open all year, but when you think about the activities, we've got kids up here pretty much all year long. Sure.
I get that. I worked
Kind of
year-round.
kind of repeat that concept for
Yeah.
anyone listening
Okay.
online.
She mentioned 2 of her kids worked through the summer and saved up, and that was their spending money for the year. And this would obviously cut into the time that they could work in the summer. Saying that, there are other weeks when there would be time that they could work if they could find a job. Yes. Right. Right. Yeah, I understand. We have kids who work year-round. And the example I gave to Dr. Murphy this afternoon on that, I know we have a kid who goes down here to Sonic and is a car hop 5 or 6 nights a week after going to school all day. So if there were a week a month where he didn't have the responsibility of coming to school, there would be a little downtime for that kid that he doesn't get now. So I get it. I get it. I worked on the trash crew at the racetrack my senior year of high school and spent every night stomping trash in the trash truck so that more trash would fit. In the dark in rubber boots, and your boots would get full of beer, and it was a great growth experience, to say the least. So I understand having to work for the spending money, because that was all I was working for, was to pay for my car so I could drive to school, so I could then drive to work to make the money to pay for my car. So yeah. Yeah. So we, yeah.
During the
Mhm.
summer. For me, I did work school hours too, but it was not, anyway.
Yeah.
I'm just devil's advocate because I've had some parents
Yeah.
have some questions, and mine is not in high school yet, but
Right.
she will be soon, so those are all.
Right. You know, and I worked in tourism. I worked at Oakland, I worked at Magic Springs, and I know that there is a tourism concern that we would be impacting the workforce, and that was part of why it's taken this long for the state to allow these options to even come into place, because the tourism lobby
Wouldn't allow it.
lobbied the legislature
Correct.
every session that this came up. That's why the date of the starting school is set so close to Labor Day, because they don't want people to shift their thoughts from summer vacation to back to school. Because as soon as people start thinking back to school, they stop thinking summer vacation. But if you look at our tourism industry now, there's not really an end to the opportunities to work in tourism in this community, because there are tourists in this community every weekend all year long. Driving home on Friday afternoon, there's no difference in the traffic in downtown March than there is in July than there is in November. The sidewalks are covered up with people. The people are here, and the job force, the workforce is needed then just as much as it's needed in the summer. Uh-huh. Yeah. And I think I checked with the high school counselor, and she thought we had about 20 or 25 kids that work all summer at Magic Springs. And that would impact
Those
their
kids.
ability to work.
Right.
Or the shift they work.
Take a 3 to 9 shift at Magic Springs.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
So with this schedule, you could take vacations in the off time of the year, which is gonna cut your prices on vacation.
It can, as you can see, as you begin to just look at all of it, it does create a conversation with pros and cons on either side of it, and that's really the why we're here. It's an available option. It warrants consideration, and we would like for the community to weigh in on the issue. Want to thank each of you for being
Terry's
here
got
and
a
providing.
question.
You got another question?
Yeah.
We do.
Yep. We're not sure on that either. We hadn't gotten to that point. We have thought about it. We don't. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, any of your articulation agreements, such as your with National Park, potentially in the future Saline County, online courses, all of that flexibility occurs with those partnerships, and it's probably the greatest challenge in merging this type of schedule. It'd have to be a K through 12 schedule, but the greatest constraints in making it fit would be at the secondary level. That's where the greatest conflicts would arise, because there's more partnerships with other entities.
We know that Cutter kids go on Mondays to
Right.
National Park.
To National Park.
If they're in the National Park program, even though Cutter is out on Monday. And if they need transportation, Cutter will provide that transportation.
Dr. Murphy, you mentioned that there were about a dozen schools that had probably done this for a couple of years. Is it possible to look at those schools' standardized tests and see if there was any fluctuations with improvements, declines, and to see kind of how they trended?
But we didn't test for 2 years because of COVID.
Right.
So this past year was the first
Would
year
be
we
the
had a
first.
score prior to.
Be such a marginal, narrow window that it would be pure speculation as to the impact. here again, be mindful that we're kind of engaging into a conversation, and if we're seeking richer data, then we need a pause button for a 3 to 5 year window so that we can see some trend lines established, see some people move to it, move back away from it. We're just floating this out as a point of conversation to determine if there is an initial degree of interest in that regard. But, it would be very premature to say that there's a strong trend line because it's not been allowed to be formulated for a long enough period of time to really analyze. Ms. Peters?
Have you thought about, I'm sure you have, attracting future talent for Fountain Lake School District teachers and things like that? Do you think this will be a pro for that, or do you think it'll be derogatory?
Well, that's part of the rationale behind some of the approaches with the 4-day week. There's an ebb and flow of recruitment, retainment of quality. What does the work environment, the work experience look like? When you step into this formulation of a calendar and you marry up to that and you begin to do that traditionally, I recall a school that did a trimester calendar outside the St. Louis area. They did it for 20 plus years, and they were well known for it, and so people either chose to be a part of it or not be a part of it. And so I think you'd find the same thing if you embraced a rich tradition that we were going to hang our hat and our community really said, this is us. You would find that people would either gravitate to it or potentially migrate away from it. But I think that it does have a point in bearing, and I think there's some small schools across the state of Arkansas that are trying to create a point of identity and the latitude to offset the lack of compensation and salary by utilizing a 4-day week. Mm-hmm. So yes, we have had some discussions with each of those two. Working with Mr. Freeman, we would probably be rewriting our after-school programming grant funds and how we would orchestrate extended care in that same regard. Have those details all been finalized? No, because what we're doing right now is we're just initializing a level of community input. There's no need to create an enormous amount of detail into a concept that people are not interested in. And we really don't know the degree of community interest at this point. Sure. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm.
Randy?
So my question to you is, you said we have to present something by May of how we want our next school year to be so will this decision maybe be made by May if we're gonna swing forward with it, or if we're not gonna swing forward?
Yeah, where we are right now is our intention is to take the survey results to the board next Monday and seek guidance from the school board as to what our next step, if any, would be. And, if traditional calendar is the overwhelming preference of the community, then normally in February or March is when we present the calendar for the next year to the board. And so either way, February is my prediction for when we would present a calendar.
Something of, of this magnitude of a change, you would not want to be making that decision in April or May. So what he was alluding to in a May timeframe, that would be the very latest in the event that we went down a path and started with a certain type of calendar and we then wanted to make a change. I think you were alluding to
that was the
as
question.
Late a time frame as you could make a change.
Yeah.
But we'd want to make a change earlier than that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right, Terry and then Ethan.
So at the last board meeting, y'all had already surveyed the teachers.
Mm-hmm.
What y'all said, did y'all give them another survey since then?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We did.
Do you want to kind of go into that?
I
mean,
can.
It kind of alludes to the fact that the teachers really was looking for a 143-day schedule.
Yeah. We offered up in the first survey, the 4 options allowed by law: traditional, 4-day week, year-round week, and the alternative
Yes.
calendar, which is the one that counts the minutes. Okay? And there, the teachers polled out, and their top choice was the 4-day week. Longer days, about 143 school days.
Right.
And our school board was not interested in going that path, so then we constructed these 3 options that you see here. I mean, they got it handwritten. They didn't get it all spiffy like you all get, but they got handwritten versions of these 3 calendars. And they chose year-round. 55%, this was their first choice.
It was not
And-
much over 50%. So, I mean, from the employee's perspective, I would just tell you right now, looking at the employee base, there's not any real pendulum momentum one direction or another from the employee's perspective.
When I talk about bringing teachers in, I'm concerned losing teachers.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Ethan?
So schedule looking at right now.
Yep.
5 days.
Uh-huh.
You still get out an hour earlier on Wednesdays.
Yes. Early dismissal on Wednesdays on this calendar. The 4-day week year-round was the only one that didn't have the early dismissal.
One last question on that. What Ethan's talking about. What about snow days, flu days?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
What would happen then?
You just have to, you're not allowed AMI, which is alternative means of instruction, even though we have an AMI plan approved for 2 more years. You wouldn't be able to use that AMI plan on,
So they get a snow day.
they would get a snow day and have to make it up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you could tack your snow days on to the, spread them out over the weeks that you have out. And,
If we had to trade out a week that we were already off for a week that we could just be on snow day, that'd
Right.
work.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. Or you could,
sit there looking at snow while they're on the computer.
right. Or you could spread out the makeup days over the weeks that you're off during the school year so that it didn't, if somebody had plans for one of those cheap vacations, then it wouldn't knock them out of their cheap vacation.
I mean, let's get real. It's all about vacation.
Well,
It's-
My child said, don't forget to ask about snow days.
I appreciate and respect each of your time and appreciate you being here tonight. Is there any other final questions? We do have a giveaway that for each of you that came, I definitely want to make sure the PTO hands out a gift card here. Is there any final question? We're going to be, I think the surveys probably, at this point, probably went out. And so you'll be able to take a look at those calendars and then analyze them and create some choice options there. You want to get up here, young lady, or what do we want to do here? Okay. So 125-2117. 125-2117. Do we have anyone that wants a gas card or gift card? Hey, back there in the back, there we go. Mr. Murphy. Thank you very much for coming tonight. Anything else, Mr. Campbell, as we wrap up? Well, have a Merry Christmas.